She thought she just missed a train, but helping one old man changed her entire life. Have you ever had one of those days where you just want to get home, collapse on the couch, and forget the world for a while? That's exactly where Danielle Porter was on a chilly Thursday evening in downtown Philadelphia. She was 34, a marketing assistant at a mid-sized firm near Market Street, and her day had been packed with endless emails, last-minute edits on presentations, and a manager who seemed to think urgent was the only word in the English language. By the time she reached the train station, she was running on fumes, clutching her bag like it carried the last ounce of her patience. The loudspeaker echoed the familiar call, Track 7, last eastbound service for the night now boarding. Her heart sank. She picked up her pace, weaving through clusters of commuters, the sound of rolling suitcases and shuffling shoes bouncing off the concrete walls. Just as Danielle spotted the train, its bright lights waiting like a lifeline, she noticed something that made her slow down. An elderly man stood near the edge of the platform, one hand gripping a wooden cane, the other struggling to gather scattered groceries. A paper bag had split open, sending apples rolling in every direction. A loaf of bread was face down on the dirty ground, and a carton of milk leaked from one corner. People walked by, sidestepping him, barely glancing his way. Danielle froze. She could still make it to the train if she hurried. Her muscles tensed with that fight between responsibility and empathy. "Come on," she whispered to herself, torn. The train's doors let out a warning beep. She could see a conductor waiting, watching the last passengers rush aboard. Then her eyes went back to the old man. His hand trembled as he bent to reach for a rolling apple. His cane wobbled, and for a second Danielle thought he might actually fall. Without another thought, she sprinted toward him instead of the train. "Here, let me help you," she said, dropping to her knees, scooping up apples before they rolled onto the tracks. The man let out a strained laugh. "Thank you, miss. I thought I had it handled, but my hands don't quite do what they used to." "That's all right," Danielle said softly. "Groceries can be tricky even for me, and I don't have a cane." She gathered what she could and noticed the cardboard milk carton was done for. "This one's a goner," she said, lifting it carefully. He sighed. "Well, there goes tomorrow's coffee." They shared a brief smile, but behind her, Danielle heard the train's final chime. She looked over just in time to see the doors slide shut. The sound of its wheels grinding against the rails filled the station. She'd missed it. For a moment, frustration hit her hard. This was the last train home. She lived nearly an hour away. Now she'd have to figure out a late bus or call for a ride share she couldn't really afford. But then she looked at the old man again. His gratitude was written all over his face, his eyes glistening under the fluorescent lights. "Let me at least help you carry these," Danielle offered. "You're a kind young woman," he said, straightening with effort. "Name's Walter Hensley." "Danielle," she replied, holding out her hand. "Danielle Porter." Their handshake was warm, steady, despite the chaos around them. Something about it felt like the start of a conversation that wasn't going to end on that platform. But what Danielle didn't know yet was that missing this train wasn't just an inconvenience. It was the very moment her entire life would begin to change. Walter leaned heavily on his cane as Danielle helped him gather the last of the groceries. His hands trembled slightly, the veins showing like fragile blue lines beneath his skin. She noticed his breathing was uneven, as though even the act of bending down had drained him. "You sure you're all right?" Danielle asked, adjusting her bag to free up her hands. Walter chuckled, though it was thin. "I've been better, but I've also been worse. These old knees don't like surprises anymore, and tonight they gave me one." Danielle smiled politely. Though her mind was racing, she glanced at the empty track where her train had disappeared. "Well, at least you don't have to worry about making a train. Looks like I'm the one stuck now." Walter tilted his head, watching her carefully. "You gave that up for me?" She shrugged, trying to brush it off. "It's no big deal. Someone had to help you. I couldn't just run past." His eyes softened. Most people did. Danielle didn't know what to say to that. She had seen it too. The way people sidestepped him, eyes glued to their phones or fixed on the train, and she wondered if she hadn't stopped. How long would Walter have been there, struggling alone? They walked slowly toward the exit, Danielle balancing one bag in each hand while Walter leaned against his cane. The city night greeted them with its sharp air, the sidewalks glowing under the yellow streetlights. The sound of traffic on Market Street filled the background, mingling with distant horns and voices. "So, where do you live?" Danielle asked, trying to keep the conversation light. Walter smiled faintly. "South Philly, been there most of my life. But I don't drive anymore. And the buses? Well, they don't always come when they should. I figured I'd give the train a try. Didn't exactly go as planned." "Yeah, public transit has a mind of its own," Danielle replied with a sigh. "I'm in Cherry Hill. Without that last train, it's going to be an expensive night." Walter stopped at the corner, steadying himself against a lamppost. "Let me make it up to you. I've got a car service I use sometimes. Not one of those app rides, a proper driver. I'll call him. He'll take you home." Danielle hesitated. The offer sounded generous, but it also sounded unusual. Why would a stranger go out of his way for her? "That's kind, but you don't have to." "Really, I know I don't have to," Walter said, his voice firm but gentle. "But kindness shouldn't go one way. You gave up your train for me. Let me give you a ride home. Besides, I could use a hand getting the groceries to my place first." She studied him for a moment. His tone wasn't pushy, just sincere. Still, something about helping an elderly man carry groceries back to his home felt strangely weighty. Not dangerous exactly, but significant. "All right," Danielle finally said. "I'll help you get your groceries home. Then we'll see about this ride." Walter's smile widened, a rare brightness breaking through his weathered expression. "Fair enough. Thank you, Danielle." They started down the sidewalk together, walking at his pace. The city felt different now, not just a backdrop for her commute, but alive with possibility. Danielle glanced at the man beside her, wondering who exactly he was. But what she didn't realize was that this simple walk to Walter's apartment would be the first step into a story far bigger than either of them could have predicted. Walter's apartment building wasn't far, just a 15-minute walk from the station, but with his pace, it stretched closer to half an hour. Danielle didn't mind. She wasn't in a rush anymore. The night air cooled her frustration, and oddly enough, she felt calmer walking beside him than she had all day. The building was older, a faded red brick complex tucked between a laundromat and a corner deli. The steps creaked under their weight as Danielle helped Walter inside. His apartment smelled faintly of coffee grounds and old books, the kind of scent that made her think of libraries. "You can set the bags on the counter," Walter said, motioning toward the kitchen. "I'll put things away later." Danielle nodded, taking in the small space. Family photos lined the shelves, black and white portraits, sepia-and wedding pictures, and a framed photo of a young soldier in uniform. She recognized Walter in the face, though decades younger. "That you?" she asked, pointing at the picture. Walter chuckled, lowering himself into an armchair. "Yeah, that was a lifetime ago. Army 1969, my knees were a whole lot stronger then." Danielle smiled. "You look proud in that photo." "I wasn't scared, but proud." There was a pause. Danielle shifted, unsure how long she was supposed to stay. "Well, I should probably figure out how to get home." "Already taken care of," Walter said, reaching for a small flip phone on the side table. He dialed a number with slow precision. "Harvey, it's Walter. I'll need a car tonight. Cherry Hill, yes, right away." He closed the phone with a snap and looked at Danielle. "He'll be here in 10 minutes. Danielle raised an eyebrow. "You weren't kidding about the driver." "Told you," Walter grinned. "Old-fashioned, maybe, but reliable." Minutes later, a knock came at the door. A tall man in a dark suit stood there, clean-shaven, with sharp features. He greeted Walter with a respectful nod. "Mr. Hensley, car's ready." Walter looked at Danielle. "Go on. Harvey will get you home safe." Something about the situation felt surreal. Danielle had expected to be stranded, maybe waiting hours for a bus. Instead, she was being handed off to what looked more like a private chauffeur. She hesitated. "Are you sure? This feels like too much." Walter shook his head. "Nothing's too much for someone who stops to help. You'll see, Danielle. Sometimes the smallest decisions lead to the biggest turns in life." Danielle didn't know how to respond, so she simply thanked him again and followed Harvey to the sleek black sedan parked outside. The ride was quiet at first, city lights streaking past the windows. Harvey drove smoothly, his posture straight, almost military-like. Danielle shifted in the back seat, curiosity bubbling. "Do you always drive for Mr. Hensley?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," Harvey replied without glancing back. "Mr. Hensley has been my client for nearly 15 years. Danielle tilted her head. "He must be important." Harvey's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Let's just say he's respected." The answer only raised more questions. Respected in what way? Respected by who? Danielle wanted to ask more, but Harvey's tone made it clear he wasn't going to elaborate. When they pulled up outside her apartment complex in Cherry Hill, Harvey stepped out, opened her door, and handed her a small envelope. "From Mr. Hensley," he said simply. Danielle frowned, taking it carefully. "What is this?" He said, "You'll understand when the time is right." Before she could ask more, Harvey was already back in the car, pulling away into the night. Danielle stood on the curb, the envelope heavy in her hands, her heart racing with a mix of excitement and unease. She unlocked her apartment door, dropped her bag, and sat at the kitchen table. With trembling fingers, she opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note and something that made her gasp. A check. Her eyes scanned the note. "For your kindness. We'll speak soon," while she looked again at the check, her breath catching in disbelief. But what Danielle didn't know was that this check wasn't just money. It was an invitation into Walter's world, a world she wasn't prepared for. Danielle sat at her kitchen table long after Harvey's car disappeared into the night. The check in her hand was not small. In fact, it was more than she made in 2 months at her job. Her eyes darted from the number to the neat signature at the bottom. "Walter Hensley. Who are you, Walter?" she whispered to herself. For a while, she considered tearing it up. Accepting money from a stranger didn't sit right with her. But there it was, undeniable, real, heavy with possibility. The next morning at work, she tried to shake it off. Emails stacked up. Her manager barked for revisions, and the office coffee tasted like burned dirt. But her mind kept drifting back to Walter, the envelope, the driver who addressed him like a dignitary. By lunchtime, her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. Danielle almost ignored it, but something told her to answer. "Hello, Danielle Porter." The voice was deep, calm. "Yes, this is she." "This is Harvey. Mr. Hensley would like to invite you to dinner this evening, his home." "He insists," Danielle blinked, taken aback. "Dinner with him?" "Yes, ma'am. I'll pick you up at 7 Hack." The line went dead before she could protest. That evening, Danielle found herself pacing her living room, debating whether to go. Part of her screamed that it was crazy. She barely knew this man, but another part, the part that couldn't stop thinking about his gentle smile in the note, whispered that maybe she should go. At exactly 7, Harvey's black sedan pulled up. Danielle smoothed her blouse, grabbed her coat, and climbed inside. "Evening, ma'am," Harvey said, as formal as ever. The car glided through the city, crossing the bridge into a quiet neighborhood Danielle had never seen before. When they stopped, she gawked. Walter's house wasn't just a house. It was a stonefront estate. Large but not flashy, tucked behind tall iron gates. The kind of place you saw in magazines, not real life. Walter greeted her at the door with a warmth that instantly eased her nerves. He wore a simple sweater and slacks. Nothing extravagant. "Danielle, I'm so glad you came. Please come in." She stepped inside, stunned by the sight. The foyer opened into wide rooms filled with shelves of books, oil paintings, and antique furniture. Yet it didn't feel cold. It felt lived in, full of history. At the dining table, a spread of food awaited them. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, roasted vegetables, and a basket of warm bread. "Wow," Danielle said. "This looks incredible," Walter chuckled. "Harvey's wife cooked. She insists on feeding me too much." They sat, and for the first time, Danielle truly relaxed. They ate and they talked. Walter asked about her job, her family, her dreams. She told him about her late nights at the office, how she wanted to do more creative work but never had the chance, how she sometimes felt stuck. "You remind me of myself years ago," Walter said, sipping his wine, "full of potential, waiting for someone to open the right door." Danielle raised an eyebrow. "And you think you're that someone?" Walter smiled almost mischievously. Perhaps there was something about the way he said it that made her shiver, not from fear, but from the strange sense that her life was about to tilt in a direction she hadn't asked for. As dinner ended, Walter leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Danielle, I don't believe in coincidences. You missed that train for a reason, and I believe our meeting was meant to happen. So I'd like to offer you something, but it's not a small offer. It's something that will change everything." Danielle's fork froze halfway to her plate. Her heart thumped, but she had no idea that Walter's offer wasn't just generosity. It was a test that would challenge every belief she had about trust, loyalty, and the price of opportunity. Danielle leaned forward in her chair, her pulse quickening. "What do you mean, change everything?" Walter folded his hands on the table, his eyes steady. "I mean opportunity. The kind most people never even get close to." She narrowed her gaze. "You're being mysterious," Walter chuckled. "All right, let's be plain. I've built relationships over decades. People in business, politics, philanthropy. I'm at a stage in life where I can't manage it all myself anymore. I need someone young, sharp, and trustworthy." "Someone like you." Danielle blinked. "Me? You don't even know me." "I know enough," Walter replied. "You stopped to help when no one else did. That tells me more about your character than a resume ever could." Danielle sat back, trying to process his words. Part of her wanted to laugh. She was a mid-level marketing assistant, barely keeping up with bills. What did she know about running in circles like his? "What exactly would you want me to do?" she asked. Walter smiled faintly. "Learn. Observe. Be by my side for a while. There's more to my life than groceries and train stations, Danielle." Before she could reply, Harvey appeared at the doorway. His presence was so quiet she almost jumped. "Mr. Hensley," he said, "your call is ready." Walter nodded. "Thank you, Harvey." "Danielle, wait here just a moment. Help yourself to more bread." He rose slowly, cane tapping, and left the room. The moment he disappeared, Danielle exhaled. She felt both flattered and uneasy. What exactly was she getting pulled into? Her eyes wandered around the dining room again. This time she noticed details she'd missed before. On the far wall, an old photograph hung in a heavy frame. Walter shaking hands with a governor she recognized from history books. Another picture showed him with a group of men at a groundbreaking ceremony, all in hard hats. She rose and walked into the living room, curiosity pushing her forward. There, on a side table, lay a stack of letters sealed in thick cream envelopes. The top one was addressed to a foundation she'd heard of, a national one that funded huge projects. Danielle reached out, tempted to peek, when Harvey's voice cut through the air. "I wouldn't touch those if I were you." She spun around. Harvey stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "I wasn't. You were curious," he said flatly. "That's normal. But Mr. Hensley values privacy. If you want to be in his world, you'll need to learn that fast." Danielle swallowed. "So this is real? He's really connected to all of this?" Harvey's eyes flicked toward the stack of letters. "More than you can imagine?" Walter's cane tapped against the floor as he returned, smiling as if nothing had happened. "Now, where were we?" Danielle quickly moved back toward the table, heat rising in her face. She forced a smile. "You were telling me about this opportunity." "Yes," Walter said, settling back into his chair. "But this isn't something we'll settle tonight. I want you to think about it. Come back tomorrow. There's more I want to show you. More I need you to understand." She hesitated, torn between excitement and caution. "All right? Tomorrow." Walter nodded, satisfied. "Good. Harvey will bring you on the ride home." Danielle couldn't shake the images from Walter's house. The photographs, the letters, Harvey's warning. She knew she should be cautious, but a part of her was undeniably drawn in. When she reached her apartment, she opened her laptop, intending to distract herself with work. Instead, she found herself typing Walter Hensley, Philadelphia into the search bar. Within seconds, articles appeared. Old headlines, pictures, snippets of history, and with every scroll, Danielle's breath grew shorter, because the man she had helped at the train station wasn't just well-coned. He was someone whose name carried weight in places she never dreamed she'd reach. But what Danielle didn't realize yet was that being close to Walter meant stepping into a world of secrets that could lift her up or pull her under. The next evening, Harvey's sedan pulled up right on time. Danielle had barely slept the night before, her mind replaying the images from Walter's home and the headlines she'd uncovered online. Walter Hensley wasn't just some elderly man with bad knees. He'd been a major developer in Philadelphia, the kind who reshaped neighborhoods. He donated millions to hospitals, schools, and cultural centers. His name showed up in press photos beside senators and CEOs. He was respected, yes, but also controversial. Some articles accused him of buying influence. Others suggested his money didn't always come from clean deals, and now for some reason he wanted her close to him. Harvey drove her back to the estate in silence. Danielle fidgeted in the back seat, gripping her bag as if it were a shield. When she arrived, Walter was waiting in the library, surrounded by shelves stacked to the ceiling. A fire crackled in the fireplace, casting shadows across the room. "Danielle," he said warmly, "thank you for coming back. Not everyone would." She offered a nervous smile. "You did invite me." Walter's eyes twinkled. "True, but you had a choice." He gestured toward the chair opposite him. As she sat, he leaned forward, his hands clasped on his cane. "I'll get to the point," he said. "I want you to work for me. Not as a secretary, not as an assistant in the usual sense. I want you to be my eyes and ears. I'll open doors you never dreamed of, but I'll need your loyalty. Absolute loyalty." Danielle's stomach tightened. "What exactly does that mean?" Walter tilted his head. "It means you'll be trusted with information others would pay dearly to have. You'll meet people who shape the direction of this city, maybe even beyond it. You'll learn how things really move behind the curtains." She swallowed hard. "And if I say no?" Walter leaned back, his expression calm. "Then you walk away, and we never speak of this again. You go back to your office job, your burned coffee, your manager's endless demands. Life as usual." Danielle bit her lip. The safe option was clear. Say no, walk away. But the weight of the check tucked into her desk drawer reminded her she'd already stepped into Walter's orbit. Could she really pretend nothing happened? "What would I actually do day to day?" she asked carefully. Walter smiled. "Listen, observe, carry messages, attend events at my side. It will start small, but eventually you'll understand why I need someone like you." At that moment, Harvey entered the room carrying a small folder. He handed it to Walter, who slid it across the desk to Danielle. "Consider this your first test," Walter said. Danielle opened the folder. Inside was a simple document, or so it looked. But as her eyes scanned the page, her pulse raced. It was a confidential memo about a redevelopment project in South Philly, complete with numbers, names, and signatures. If leaked, it could shake investors and spark headlines. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked. "Because I want to see how you handle power," Walter replied. "Do you keep it close? Do you panic? Or do you start thinking about what it means? That will tell me who you are." Danielle closed the folder, her palms sweating. "And if I make the wrong choice?" Walter's smile didn't waver, but his voice grew quieter. "Then this ends tonight, and I'll know I misjudged you." The fire crackled louder in the silence that followed. Danielle felt the weight of the decision pressing on her chest. She had wanted more out of life. But was this the kind of more she was ready for? But what Danielle didn't yet realize was that this test wasn't just about loyalty. It was about stepping into a game where one wrong move could cost her far more than a missed train. Danielle spent the next few days in a fog, the folder never far from her thoughts. She tucked it into the bottom drawer of her desk at home, locked, but the weight of it felt constant. Every time she opened her laptop, she thought of those names, those numbers, the secret sitting just a few feet away. By Friday evening, Harvey was back at her door. No words, just a nod toward the waiting car. She followed him, her stomach knotted. Walter greeted her in the library again, though this time the atmosphere was heavier. He motioned for her to sit. So he began. "You've had time to think." Danielle took a breath. I looked at it. "I didn't share it, if that's what you're worried about." Walter's eyes locked on hers, searching. "And what did you feel when you read it?" She hesitated. "Honestly overwhelmed, like I was holding something I wasn't supposed to see." Walter nodded slowly. "That's good. Respect for weight. Most people would have thought first about how to use it. You didn't." Danielle exhaled in relief, but Walter wasn't done. "Let me tell you something," he said, leaning forward. "Power isn't about money. Not really. Money runs out, shifts, gets eaten by taxes and inflation. Real power is about information. The person who knows first, the person who knows more, that's the person who wins. Do you understand?" Danielle nodded, though uneasily. I think so. Good, Walter said. Because information is what I deal in, and now so do you, if you want. Before she could respond, Harvey entered, carrying another folder. He set it on the desk between them. Walter tapped it with his cane. This one, Walter said softly, isn't just about numbers. It's about people. Inside are records, favors owed, promises made, some of the names you'll recognize. Some of them hold offices you thought were untouchable. All of them trust me to keep their secrets. And now, by extension, they would be trusting you. Danielle's chest tightened. Why me? Why not someone you've known for years? Why pull a stranger into this? Walter studied her for a long moment. His voice, when it came, was almost tender. Because strangers can become family, Danielle, and sometimes family is found, not born. You helped me when no one else even saw me. That told me you could be trusted when it mattered most. The words sank deep, but before Danielle could reply, Harvey cleared his throat. Mr. Hensley, are you certain? Walter shot him a sharp look. I'm certain. Harvey's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. Danielle shifted in her seat, sensing tension between the two men. She opened her mouth to ask, but Walter cut her off. There's something you need to know, Danielle. Not everyone who smiles at you means well. The higher you climb, the more knives point at your back. If you stay close to me, you'll be under my protection. But protection comes with responsibility. That's the price. She swallowed hard. And if I walk away, Walter's expression softened, but his words carried weight. Then you walk away carrying things you cannot speak of ever. That would be the end of it. But somehow I don't think that's the path you're meant for. The room grew quiet. The only sound the faint crackle of the fire. Danielle felt trapped between fear and fascination. She wanted to run, yet something inside her pulled her closer, telling her this was the chance she had been waiting for all along. Finally, she whispered, What do you want me to do next? Walter smiled, satisfied. Come with me tomorrow. There's a meeting. You won't speak. Just listen. After that, you'll know if this life is yours to take. Danielle nodded, though her heart pounded. She wasn't sure she was ready, but she knew she was already in too deep to turn back. But what she didn't realize was that tomorrow's meeting wouldn't just open her eyes. It would tear the veil completely, forcing her to confront the full truth about Walter Hensley and the world she had stumbled into. The next afternoon, Danielle found herself in the back of Harvey's sedan again. She clutched her coat tightly, staring out the window as the city blurred past. Every nerve in her body screamed that this was bigger than anything she'd ever imagined, but it was too late to step away. Harvey said little, though Danielle noticed the occasional glance at her through the rearview mirror. Finally, as they approached a tall glass building downtown, he spoke. Whatever you hear today, remember silence is survival. Understand? Danielle nodded quickly, her throat dry. Inside the building, she followed Walter into a private conference room. The table gleamed under fluorescent lights, and already seated were 3 men and 2 women. Danielle recognized one of them instantly, a councilman whose face was plastered on election posters across the city. Another she remembered from the news, a developer behind some of the most expensive housing projects in Philadelphia. Walter introduced her simply. This is Danielle. She's with me. No one questioned it. Instead, they nodded, returning to their papers, their conversations. Danielle sat quietly beside Walter, her hands folded tightly in her lap. For the next hour, she listened in stunned silence as the group discussed deals, land swaps, campaign funding, and promises traded like currency. Numbers were tossed around that made her head spin. At one point, the councilman leaned back and said casually, As long as that zoning change goes through, we're clear. Right, Walter. Walter gave a slight nod, his presence commanding without force. Everyone deferred to him as though his approval alone carried more weight than contracts or signatures. Danielle realized then this wasn't just about power. This was about control. Influence so deep it bent the rules before anyone else even knew they existed. When the meeting ended, Walter stood leaning on his cane. Thank you, everyone. As always, it's a pleasure. The others shook his hand, some whispering words she couldn't quite catch, and then they left one by one, leaving only Danielle, Walter, and Harvey in the room. Walter turned to her, eyes sharp. Now you see, this is what I wanted you to understand. Decisions that shape lives don't happen out there on the streets or in the papers. They happen in rooms like this where only a few are allowed in. Danielle's voice trembled. It feels wrong, like they're playing with people's lives. Walter didn't flinch. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But that's how the world works. And now you have a choice. Walk away knowing the truth but never speaking it. Or step in fully and use this knowledge to carve a life you never thought possible. The weight of his words crushed her chest. Part of her wanted to run out of the room and never look back, but another part whispered that she couldn't unsee what she had seen. She couldn't go back to being invisible, pushing papers in a cubicle while others shaped the city above her head. Danielle drew in a shaky breath. I don't know if I can do this. Walter's voice softened. You don't have to know today. Life isn't about knowing every answer. It's about what you choose when the moment comes. You chose kindness when you stopped for me. That's why you're here. Whatever you choose next will decide who you become. She looked at him, at the man whose groceries she had picked up only days ago, and realized how one simple act had placed her at a crossroads far bigger than herself. When Harvey drove her home later, Danielle stared out at the city lights, her reflection in the window staring back with a mix of fear and determination. For the first time in her life, she understood that small choices could carry enormous consequences. And though she didn't have all the answers yet, she knew this much. Doing the right thing, even when no one else does, always matters. Because you never know when that one decision will change everything. The lesson is simple. Kindness costs nothing, but it can open doors you never imagined. Never ignore the chance to help someone because that moment might be the very beginning of your story. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs a reminder that small choices matter. And if you've ever had a moment where a simple act of kindness changed your path, tell your story because you never know who might need to hear.